Hi, everybody. This is Bill Owen. It's podcast time, and we're once again going back to the old days of radio. Old-time radio, as they used to call it. I belonged to an organization in Newark, New Jersey for many years. We had a convention annually for, 20, 30 years called the Friends of Old-Time Radio, and we brought back some of the actual performers of that golden era. And the years of the Atwater, Kent, Philco radios being tuned in, and what an exciting time it was. Anyway, we're going to focus today on the theme songs of old-time radio. Oh, that's an incredible topic. I suppose you'd have to say that the most familiar of all the theme songs would be the Lone Ranger, and of course Rossini's William Tell Overture. Dump, da-da-dump, 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 dump, 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 dump. And you're familiar with that great opening that Fred Foy would read day after day. Fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver, the Lone Ranger. And then up would come the famous theme song, the William Tell Overture. Actually, there was bridge music by Liszt that we don't think about, but it was just called Les Préludes. But of course, the regular theme song that we all know is da-dum, 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 da-dum. Rossini's William Tell Overture, program that started way back in 1930 on WXYZ, Detroit, Michigan. But there are a lot of other theme songs we want to mention. Another famous one would be The Shadow, and Onfal's Spinning Wheel by Saint-Saëns. The question is, Saint-Saëns or Saint-Saëns, a great French composer. I learned years ago that in that particular case, if you speak French, you have the option of saying, if it's your proper name, of pronouncing the S or not pronouncing the S. And the Saint-Saëns family apparently said that they wanted to, not apparently, they did say they wanted it pronounced. So it's Camille Saint-Saëns and Onfal's Spinning Wheel. The Shadow knows. Oh, some other theme songs come to mind. Jack Benny, Love in Bloom, da-da-da-da-dum, da-dum, da-da. We didn't hear much of it usually, just a few bars. But on would come that great comedian, and some consider the greatest of all comedians. And, Phil Harris had his own little theme song on the Jack Benny show. So I've got some notes here on it. Let's see, turn over to Jack Benny. And, Phil Harris, the band leader and also the comedian, character actor, he used to say, won't you come with me to Alabama, back to see my dear old mammy? She's frying eggs and cooking hammy, and that's what I like about the South. Oh, the great Phil Harris, married to Alice Faye, of course. They have their own big radio show. How about, let's see. We talked about the Lone Ranger, the Shadow. How about Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy? Oh, there's a very famous theme song. And see if I can remember how it went. Let's see. Wave the flag for Hudson High, boys. Show them how we stand. Ever shall our team be champion, known throughout the land. Then you'd hear, rah-rah, boola, 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 rah-rah-rah. Have you tried Wheaties? They're whole wheat with all of the bran. Won't you try Wheaties? For wheat is the best food of man. And there were other changes. Sometimes it was every fellow should be a champion, and sometimes ever fight to be a champion, or ever challenging we champions. But it was a group called the Norsemen. Ken Schoen, Al Revere, Ed Lindstrom, Ted Klein, and James Peterson, who was the pianist and arranger, with sang that familiar theme song day after day. Oh, that was a treat to come home from school and hear that. Bing Crosby, of course, is familiar with his theme song. You remember what it was? Where the blue of the night meets the gold of the day, someone waits for me. Boo, 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 boo. Oh, yeah. The great Bing Crosby, the star of the Kraft Music Hall. Now, there was a problem at one point. And they weren't allowed to use the theme. When ASCAP pulled its music off the air, remember the famous ASCAP strike? Why, where the blue of the night meets the gold of the day had to be omitted, and the Kraft Music Hall theme then became Hail KMH, created just for the show. Hail KMH, hail rain and snow, onward to victory, forward we will go. Stamping out our adversary like a dauntless dromedary, tramples on its foe. Forever, hail KMH, and so on and so forth. The Kraft Music Hall. Oh, let's see. Oh, Little Orphan Annie. We can't forget Little Orphan Annie, can we? One of the most famous of all the theme songs. Who's that little chatterbox? The one with curly auburn locks. Who can it be? It's Little Orphan Annie. She and Sandy make a pair. They never seem to have a care. Cute little she, it's Little Orphan Annie. Bright eyes, cheeks a rosy glow. There's a store of healthiness handy, pint size always on the go. If you want to know, arf goes Sandy, always wears a sunny smile. Now wouldn't it be worth your while if you could be like Little Orphan Annie? Oh, there were other verses too. Gather closer, girls and boys, mustn't make a bit of noise, for we will hear our Little Orphan Annie. Or there was one that went, Little Orphan Annie's here, the little girl so full of cheer. Who doesn't know our Little Orphan Annie? Oh my, what great memories. Oh, one of the classic musical programs was The Voice of Firestone. Hugh James was the announcer on that wonderful program, and he used to come on for a long time, for many years, on Music Night on NBC Radio, Monday night, The Voice of Firestone. Margaret Speaks, Richard Crooks, or a lot of great stars. And the theme was, If I Could Tell You of My Devotion. The Voice of Firestone, Tire and Rubber Company. Oh, how about Amos and Andy? Oh, yeah. Everybody from that era listened to Amos and Andy. They said they used to sometimes put up on the marquee of a theater because people would be home listening to Amos and Andy. They say, we will feed that into the theater. You won't miss your chapter or episode of Amos and Andy. So because America basically was listening to that program. Amos and Andy, Amos Jones and Andrew H. Brown. And or the theme song. They had a couple of theme songs, if I recall. Oh, yeah, The Perfect Song and Angel's Serenade. Oh, we go down the list now of programs. Back to the American Album of Familiar Music. Frank Munn. That was a very, very popular program. American Album of Familiar Music. A lot of other great stars are on there. Gustav Henshin and Donald Dame, Evelyn McGregor, Margaret Down, Gene Dickinson. And started back in 1931, sponsored by Bayer Aspirin. The American Album of Familiar Music. And it when Donald Dame was the star, it started out with Your Eyes Have Told Me So. And here we go. Now, I've got some notes here. I'm looking. Bob Burns, great comedian, with the bazooka. Remember, he used to talk about his bazooka, which became the name of a dangerous weapon that GIs used during World War II. Just a crazy instrument, but he used to play it. And his theme was appropriately the Arkansas Traveler. Bob Hope, is there any doubt about what his theme was? Thanks for the Memory, which first was heard in a motion picture. How about The Breakfast Club? Don McNeil's Breakfast Club. That was one of those shows was on in our home every morning. Nobody really paid much attention to it. It was just sort of background. But you had to turn on the radio in the morning to hear The Breakfast Club. That was the way we started our day. Don McNeil, Sam Cowling, Fiction and Fact from Sam's Almanac. And they had a little theme song that went something like, Good morning, breakfast clubbers, good morning to ya. We got up bright and early, just a howdy do ya. And then they had the march around the breakfast table, and Don McNeil would give the morning prayer, each in his own words, each in his own way. For a world united in peace, bow your heads and let us pray. It started out as the Pepper Pot, but in 1933 the name was changed to the Breakfast Club. Well, that played a little part in my life. When I left my staff announcing job at WLW Cincinnati, I gave my 2 weeks' notice, and they were a little unhappy that I was leaving, and they wanted more notice. I said, well, I gave the 2 minutes, because I was going to join ABC staff in New York, and they needed me, or said they needed me. So I gave the 2 weeks' notice, and he said, oh, they're taking all our good announcers. I know what we'll do. We'll get back. We'll cancel the Breakfast Club. I don't know whether WLW ever did carry out that threat to cancel the Breakfast Club. Be interesting to know someday. But so many other programs come to mind. How about Love Nest? That was the theme song for Burns and Allen. Just a love nest, da-da-da-da. And that, believe it or not, that same theme song was used by Ethel and Albert. Remember Peg Lynch, the creator of Ethel and Albert? One of the great mystery programs I used to listen to on Wednesday nights, Mr. and Mrs. North. It was they weren't really detectives, but they ended up having to act as detectives. Something would always befall them, and they'd get involved trying to solve the case as if they were detectives. And it was sponsored by Woodbury Soap, I remember. And the theme songs, Just the Way You Look Tonight, You're Lovely, and so on and so forth. And let's see, how about Mr. and Mrs.? Mr. and Mrs. was a comedy program started way back in 1929 on CBS. It was based on a comic strip that was very popular at that time. Claire Briggs drew that comic strip. And he had a couple of theme songs, Mean to Me and Home Sweet Home. Then, of course, there was Mr. Keane, Tracer of Lost Persons. Probably had the most appropriate of all theme songs on old-time radio. Someday I'll Find You. Oh, yeah. Mr. Keane, Tracer of Lost Person. Mr. Keane, played by Bennett Kilpack for most of the run. Phil Clark also did it. Arthur Hughes also did it a little bit later on. My Friend Irma, Marie Wilson, remember that program? Great little comedy program late in the golden age of radio in the late 1940s. And Friendship, a perfect blendship. Another of the great programs of that era came on noon Central Time, where I lived, Central Time Zone, the National Farm and Home Hour. And Everett Mitchell, who was the MC of the program, used to start out with an ebullient announcement, "It's a beautiful day in Chicago." Well, sometimes he would say, well, there's a little hail going on and we expect a little rain later, but overall, it's a beautiful day in Chicago. And Don Amici appeared as the forest ranger on that program. And as did Raymond Edward Johnson. He played that same role. Raymond Edward Johnson, who is also famous as the host on Inner Sanctum, as your host Raymond at the creaking door. But the theme song, that's what we're talking about. John Philip Sousa's The Stars and Stripes Forever. Very energetic program, very uplifting. And they talked about things that weren't of interest to a lot of city dwellers, but farm problems and things that farmers would be interested in. Now, we got to talk about Uncle Don, don't we? Uncle Don, that so many people claim or thought they'd heard that he said these terrible things about his signing off the show one day to the youngsters. You know the story, probably. Well, we've debunked that many times, and he never said anything like that. But over the years, people still think that Uncle Don got kicked off the air because what he said, that'll hold a little so and so forth. But he did a theme song too, Hello, Little Friends, Hello. And he had one called Hibbity Gits, Has Ha, Rainbow Sibonia, Skivity, Hilody, Horny da Coat with an Alakazam. Sing this song with your Uncle Don. Uncle Don Carney, played by an actor named Howard Rice. And you can't really talk about old-time radio without remembering the contributions of Arthur Godfrey. And he had a couple of theme songs. One was Seems Like Old Times, and also In the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Arthur Godfrey had a long, long run on radio, didn't he? How about the Cowboys? Roy Rogers, Happy Trails to you until we meet again. And then there was the great Gene Autry. Who can forget Gene Autry? My first cowboy hero. I had a little sweatshirt with his picture and his horse Champion on it. I was so proud of that. I was happy to be his fan. The great singing cowboy. And his theme on Melody Ranch was I'm backy in the saddle again, out where a friend is a friend. So many other programs come to mind all at once. Stella Dallas, one of the greatest of all the soap operas, had two different theme songs. One was How Can I Leave You, and then one called Memories. We mentioned the Cowboys. How can we overlook Tom Mix? The Ralston Straight Shooters are on the air. Tom Mix. He was killed, unfortunately, not in the West, aboard a horse or involved in solving a crime, but in a speeding automobile. Tom Mix. Tom Mix and the Ralston Straight Shooters are on the air. He played himself for a while. And who was it used to play? Oh, yeah. Curly Bradley portrayed him on radio, as did Artels Dixon, Russell Thorson, Jack Holden. It was really great. When it's roundup time in Texas and the bloom is on the sage. There's the Aldrich Family, the theme song, This Is It, Popeye the Sailor. I don't have to sing that one for you, do I? I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Yeah. Fred Waring, the great Fred Waring. What a great music program that was. And the theme song was I Hear Music. I hear music. I hear melodies. Sparkling songs of love tingle from your touch. Well, that was the opening, but then he had a closing theme called Sleep. Sleep, sleep. That was a morning program most of the time on NBC. He did something one time that was really unique in those days. Radio was very, very formal, and nobody else but Fred Waring, I guess, would do this. But he would start off with the opening theme, and one morning he said, wait a minute, that didn't sound right. Let's take it from the top. Let's start it all over. And you could just picture the people in the control room. Oh, my goodness, what's he doing? But he wanted it perfect. He had high standards, and he got away with that. It's a real tribute to the great Fred Waring. We haven't mentioned Eddie Cantor yet. At one point, the highest paid comedian in America, whether movies or radio or stage, Eddie Cantor. Oh, what a great entertainer. His theme song was I love to spend each Wednesday with you, unless it was Sunday, which it sometimes was. And of course, he would just change the word around. Every Saturday night, while I was a teenager, I had to tune in to listen to Your Hit Parade. And the theme was Lucky Day. And they had the same announcer for so many years on that program. Although there were others, Andre Baruch, who was married to Bee Wayne, a featured singer. And there were other announcers. I mentioned Basil Rysdale, Martin Bloch, Del Charbet. They were all on Your Hit Parade. Other shows come to mind. You Bet Your Life, with, of course, the great Groucho Marx, that wonderful quiz program, which also was a big hit on television. And the theme was Hooray for Captain Spaulding. How about the Baby Snooks show? Baby Snooks, Fanny Bryce, of course. Very appropriate theme song, I would say, Rockabye Baby. Fred Allen, we haven't talked about him today. Fred Allen with the famous Allen's Alley and Senator Claghorn and Ajax Cassidy and Mrs. Nussbaum, Titus Moody. And his theme song was Smile, Darn Ya Smile. Judy Canova. She had a couple of theme songs. One was Good Night, Sweetheart. And the one I remember the best was Go to Sleepy Little Baby, Go to Sleepy Little Baby. When you wake, you'll patty patty cake and ride a shiny little pony. She's kind of obscure now looking back. She was such a major star, Judy Canova. But you don't hear a lot of conversation about her, but she was certainly one of the leading comedians of that day. And how about Jimmy Durante? That was my wife's favorite. Oh, how she loved Jimmy Durante. One of the great comedians of that era, also very big on television, the movies. Of course, you remember Inka Dinka Doo, or You Gotta Start Off Each Day with a Song. And finally, Truth or Consequences. Oh, what a great program that was. Merrily We Roll Along. Ralph Edwards, that great MC who's famous for the line, he'd send people out on some kind of a crazy mission to pay the consequences. And he would say, Aren't we devils? Oh, it's so much fun to reminisce about those great days. They're all behind us now, but in another sense, they're still with us. At least here on this podcast, where from time to time we'll be talking about the old-time radio shows, the comic strips, the movie serials, the big bands. It was an incredible era, wasn't it? This is Bill Owen signing off.